Death perhaps is the only certainty in this world, yet the fear of death stalks most people, says the ancient Mayans. The Mayans are best known for their classical civilization of Mesoamerica, and is a great example of how culture was in the 2600 BC. Culture is shared symbols, language, values, and norms that distinguish one group from another, says in Chapter 5 of our textbook. The Mayans were well known for their brutal religious rituals, many sports and holidays, and the greatly organized social class. During this speech, I will be able to find credible sources in the internet to ensure the knowledge was correct. Today, I will be telling the story of the Mayans' culture and what they were best known for. The most famous thing they are known for is their brutal religious rituals or ceremonies. Religion was a very important part of the life of the Mayans. History Museum stated that they believed in both human and blood sacrifices. The most sacred blood was from the ear and the tongue of the human. By piercing the human's ear, the Mayans were opening their ears to hearing God's revelation. The tongue was cut because they could speak what they had heard from the God. There are different rituals for marriage and baptism, but for some ceremonies, a human sacrifice was needed. When practicing this action, the priest would tie the arms and legs of a person to a post, and then by cutting the chest open and tearing their heart out with their bare hand. The Mayans had many other rituals, like the beheading rituals, the arrow sacrifice ritual, and the Mayan ball game ritual. The Mayans' ball game was the most famous sport out of all created. The ball game was played among the Mesoamericans in about 1400 BC, says MayanAntico.com. The game recommended players striking the ball with their hips. The game could be played many ways, and sometimes the rules said that they could use their forearms, rackets, or bats. The ball was made of solid rubber and was difficult for some people to hit the ball. The betting was involved and when competing with others, but could be used as a harmless recreation game by children and adults. Some of the games would be performed in the various holidays like Christmas and New Year's Eve. The festival that made the biggest splash in the Riviera was the Mayan winter solstice. Being able to attend this type of sports or holiday celebration depended on your social class. According to History.com, the Maya society was rigidly divided between the nobles, commoners, serfs, and slaves. This system of social rules was greatly organized of social classes. The nobles, which included rulers, government officials, military leaders, and the highest priest, were typically wealthy and lived in central areas of the Maya cities. This was the highest rank of social acceptance and was admired by most. The middle class, you could say, was called the commoners, and this consisted of farmers, laborers, and servants that were working hard through their individual plots of land. Being a commoner had its downsides, though, for being forbidden for wearing clothes or symbols of nobility. They couldn't purchase or use luxury items, and they lived outside of the central areas of towns or cities. Being able to call yourself a commoner was definitely better than being a slave or a serf. Serfs belonged to the ruler of the local town leaders. This caused fear for slaves because slave trade in the Mayan area was active, and even commoners was granted access to own a slave. People could be enslaved for a crime, payment debts, a prisoner of the war, or could be sold from family members. Status wouldn't be passed down from their children, and unwanted children would sometimes be used as slaves of sacrifice during ceremonies. Most slaves would be sacrificed once owner died so that they continued their service even after death. The most interesting thing to me was that if a man married a slave woman, he would too become a slave to the woman's owner, and vice versa. With all the social classes, the community was loving and flourished. The Mayans were well known for their brutal religious rituals, many sports and holidays, and their greatly organized social classes. Being a Mayan came with great strength and courage, being that there is many gory deaths. But as the Mayans said best, death perhaps is the only certainty in this world, yet the fear of death stalks most people.